meditate on the statement of faith on the incarnation of Jesus. Excuse me, that should be on the person of Jesus. Person. As we consider in two natures this morning. So I'll read the first half of section 19 of the Belgic Confession of Faith and make some comments on that. We believe that by this conception, the person of the Son of God is inseparably united and joined with the human nature, so that there are not two sons of God, nor two persons, but two natures, united in one single person. Each nature retains its own distinct properties. His divine nature has always remained uncreated, without beginning of days or end of life, Hebrews 7, verse 3, filling heaven and earth. His human nature has not lost its properties. It has beginning of days and remains created. It is finite and retains all the properties of a true body. Even though by his resurrection he has given immortality to his human nature, he has not changed its reality, since our salvation and resurrection also depend on the reality of his body. There is a great measure of mystery that surrounds the incarnation of Christ. His entrance into this world has taken upon himself our human nature, and then how all that works itself out. And of course, history and time. The church has historically and steadfastly held that Jesus is composed of one person and two natures. It is the one person of the Son of God who comes into this world and takes on our human nature. This human nature is a full and complete human nature composed of both a human soul and a human body. He has an intellect, will, and feelings just as we do, and a physical body that grows, matures, suffers, and dies. And so he was made like us in all points and yet without sin. The confession highlights that it is essential that we retain this position of the historic Christian faith. We do not have two separate persons. That would be the error of Nestorius, which taught that you have the divine person on the one hand and a human person on the other hand in Jesus. So you have a kind of, if you will, schizophrenic view of Jesus here in a Nestorius point of view. The church has steadfastly rejected that differentiation in the personhood of Christ. It is steadfastly held that there is one person there. And so when you go through the scriptures, you find a reference only to one person. Jesus prays to the Father. It's not we pray to the Father, the Son, and Jesus, but Jesus himself, as the Son of God, prays to the Father. The Father answers the Son. And so you have just one person referred to in the scriptures as the Christ. At the same time, he is composed of two natures. And again, in our modern age, there is an ambivalence at best, if not outright hostility, towards the historic Christian view of Christ's two natures. Among some, there may be the sense that, well, he was divine in the sense that we are all divine. We have all within us a spark of divinity. There is a consciousness of the divine within. And Jesus was one who taught us how to get in touch with our inner divinity. Jesus is one who lived out that divinity in a remarkable way. But he yet remains a man who had his own weaknesses, sins, and faults. And so the modern view of Jesus is that if you wish to ascribe deity to him, it's the deity of pantheism, the deity that is underneath as the ground of being, the source out of which life comes. That's the only sense in which the modern will grant that Jesus was divine. You have to challenge them sometimes to get them to come out with that, but that's the mainline point of view. Historically, the Christian church has taught that Jesus is of a divine nature separate from his human nature, separate from this world. He is eternal. he ever existed in the presence of the Father as the Son. He is the only begotten Son of the Father in a unique relationship with the Father that has existed throughout eternity. There came a point in eternity when time was created, along with this world and all that is. And the eternal Son of God comes into the world and takes on our humanity. And so Jesus is not one who is growing and maturing as the divine, seeking to explore new things. He is eternal God who's come into human nature. Now, his human nature does grow and mature. Luke records that he grew in wisdom and in stature, in favor with God and with men. And so in his human nature, he grew. He matured in his understanding. But his deity was distinct from this world and anything within it. The humanity of Jesus does not lose its properties, its human properties, when the divine nature is united with the human. In the history of the church, we've talked about the divine and the human not being confused or commingled in some way. They remain distinct natures. And so the humanity is preserved even though it is united to the deity of the Son of God. This is important for our salvation because it is humans who have sinned, not God. It is we who have sinned in body and soul, and so it must be one with body and soul that must suffer the penalty for human sin. And so for our redemption, the Son of God must come into this world and take on our complete humanity. He cannot be simply a spirit in our midst, a ghost. He cannot simply be some Spirit of Christ that descends on an ordinary man for a period of time and then leaves him when he is crucified. No, he is the Son of God eternally who's taken on our humanity, and through all his sufferings, climaxing in his death, he remains eternal God and a human being. He retains all the properties of his humanity. His resurrection finds that his body is glorified and exalted. He ascends into the heavens. But even in that exaltation, that glorification, his body remains a human body. It does not take on divine attributes. It does not become eternal. It does not become infinite. It remains a finite being. And so Jesus in heaven remains human in heaven. And I would suggest that that has impact with regard to our view of the Lord's Supper and the Lutheran view or the Roman Catholic view of the presence of the body of Christ in the communion meal. That destroys the real humanity of Christ's body in heaven. It remains a human body, that is to say that it is located in one place at one time. So he has all the properties of a true body, and it's in that human nature that he stands for us and for our salvation. The resurrection of his body is essential for us to have any hope of our own personal resurrection. When the mainline Protestant denies the bodily resurrection of Christ and merely asserts that he rose in spirit, or that he rose in terms of the memory that he has within our hearts, that destroys the gospel. It destroys our hope of salvation. It's only if God raises that body of Jesus from the grave that we can have any hope that our bodies also will be delivered from death. And so we are tied to Jesus and to all that takes place in him. This one is one person in two natures, divine and human. And he is the one who alone has achieved salvation for us. Yeah.